Hey everybody, Steve again. And I was going to say happy Sunday, but it's not Sunday, is it? Now it's Monday. So the ravishing Mrs. Ritter is in town, and we've been around, just got back from Dubai, back to work now, and getting caught back in the swing of things again. So sorry I missed the previous Sunday, and then I'm late for this one now. So hopefully we get back in the swing of things now. But so what the idea is with Halloween is I want to talk a little bit about fear and being afraid, and just share some funny stories and a couple of Bible verses. But I remember when I was a kid growing up, one of the first movies I remember going to see and just being scared to death is the movie Jaws. So that came out in '75. I was way too young then to go see it. I think it was probably a little later in the '70s, because back in those days they'd re-release movies. You remember, a lot of you remember, they'd re-release movies during the summers, and they showed Jaws. I mean, every year they would put it out again, and finally got to go see it, and it was so. I remember sitting there watching it in the movie theater, being so afraid that I would pull my feet up off the floor. Because I don't know, I thought maybe a shark would get me or something there in the theater or something. So it's just absurd thinking about it now. But you just get so afraid you're like pulling your legs up, and there's a whole generation of people about my age that just do not go swimming in the ocean. Swimming. Now, it's one thing about wading out, waist deep or playing in the waves or whatever, but to actually like swim out. And Arlene told me she remember her dad would go out to the beach and swim out, like and they'd say we barely see him, he's just floating out there, and then he would swim back in, and I just can't even imagine that, and so I've got this deathly fear of sharks. I don't know, and Arlene thinks it's the funniest thing. She calls me a landlubber. So I just, the idea that, like, we went to the Dubai Mall last week. They have the big aquarium there. I did a video on that, the Dubai Mall, giant aquarium, big sharks in there. Not a fan, not a fan. So I'll sleep at night. I have this app on the phone. It's a rain app that plays like rain or sounds or crickets chirping or whatever, and there's one for ocean, and I don't put that one on because I don't know, afraid the water's Arlene's sitting over there right now laughing at me, afraid the water's going to lap up over me and the shark's going to get me or something. I don't know. So sharks, not a fan. All right, I afraid of sharks. And snakes, snakes, I don't like snakes, but I'm not afraid of snakes, because one thing, snake can't eat you, shark can. There you go, right? So that's the reason. So some other funny stories about fear. We were, my brother-in-law Sean and my sister-in-law Margaret, their son Robert was just a little guy, and they were they were asleep one night, heard a noise, thought it was an intruder, scared them to death. So Sean grabbed a baseball bat or something, and of course Margaret's right there, right by his arm, going, oh, what, be careful, and he's going out there, and he flips the light on in the garage. It was coming from the garage. It was noise. It was somebody in the house. Flips the light on, light goes on, and instead of this intruder, they see Robert, their son, my nephew, and he'd been sleepwalking, and it was in his underwear, right, Arlene? He was in his underwear, had his a pair of underwear over his head, and somehow he put his head in one of the leg holes and had an arm in it. So he had one arm sticking up like this with the underwear on, and he was asleep. He was sleepwalking. It's a wonder. That must have been a sight to behold. That probably would have scared me to death too, but it turned out to just be Robert. So they were able to, I think they had to cut the underwear off of him, because it's a good thing he didn't choke death, wearing that. But another time, Now this is not quite as funny, although it's kind of funny now looking back. But there was a time, and it was Halloween back in 2003. We were at the time I was going through school in New Jersey, and it was Halloween. And you always have those stories about the cultists or whatever grabbing kids and cats or whatever, and you always have that in the back of your mind. It's probably a giant urban legend or not, maybe not, but anyway, that was certainly ran through our mind when we couldn't find Benjamin. And we called, he wasn't in the house, he was not quite 4, and looking all around for him, go outside screaming up and down the street, get on the bike, ride up and down the street looking, we can't find him. He won't answer, he's not anywhere, we can't find him. We looked all through the house. And finally, we go over to one of the cars and look in the back seat, and there's Benjamin sitting there playing his Game Boy. And we're like, we were scared to death. And of course that moment of relief, and we're like, Benjamin, what? Did you hear us? And he's like, well, yeah. And, well, why didn't you answer us? And he was like, well, I was playing the Game Boy, He just couldn't be bothered, I guess. That was his quiet place to go to get away from his brothers, I guess. That was what the deal was. But that's one of those moments. It's like, oh my gosh, that could have, that was scared us to death, And then, Nathan, there was a time, the first time I took them camping, that's really where I realized that my son Nathan is a stinker. And we were camping. It was just me and Nathan and William, and Benjamin was much too little at the time. So we went camping. I took him out there first camping trip, and we were in our tent camping out there. We'd already seen a coyote around. So, we're laying there, and all of a sudden I start hearing scratching on the tent. And, of course, I'm like, protective dad mode, and I'm ready to, do some ninja moves on some coyote or something that's going to jump up. And I'm like, boys, did y'all hear that? What's that? And scratching a little bit more. I'm like, all right, it must be like a raccoon or something. Hold on. And Nathan just starts laughing. He said, Daddy, that was me. He pulled one over on me. Stinker. Your kid's in the tent like that. It's like, man, that's kind of scary. I didn't know what was out there. There's no bears in Oklahoma. Not there anyway. So, and then one last funny, Bella, bless her heart, I was chasing her around when she was just a little thing. Of course, 3 boys, you go after them, Daddy, Daddy coming after them, scaring them, chasing after them, and then boys love that, and they would laugh and run, and I would try to play that with Bella. And Bella just was never very good at that game because she'd just go, and she'd curl up in a ball and on the floor. There's no chasing her. She'd just curl up in a ball and lay down on the floor, and it's like, Bella, you got to run, sweetie, you got to run. I got to chase you. And she was never very good at that, monsters chasing you thing or whatever. But it's just funny stories like that, thinking about fear. And I was thinking about that. And, there's the Bible talks about fear, and, and I was reading some articles about this. There's like 2 kinds of fear that the Bible talks about. There's, because not all fear, you read fear in the Bible and it can mean a couple of different things. So there's fear of God, there's fear of the Lord that the Bible talks about, which it's not, be afraid of God, that and I've talked about that before, where he's just waiting to just crush you. It's a reverent, awe-inspiring fear, a respect, kind of like with your dad, or something, that fear of and respect. And then there's fear, the other type, and I was reading in this article that this is fear of something else. It's basically fear of, the fear of the Lord pulls us closer to the Lord, because it's a loving Father, in that respect for him, and we appreciate him more. It pulls us closer to God, that type of fear. The other type of fear is fear of losing control, fear of what's going to happen to us, our job, our health, reputation, fear of losing something, fear of losing control. And that's the kind of fear that pulls us away from God, that's the kind of fear that God says, do not fear. So like in Isaiah 41, chapter 41, verse 10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's the kind of fear God's telling us. Don't be afraid. Don't fear like that. Of that you're going to lose control, that you're going to lose something, because I've got you. I've got you in my hand. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And so that's the kind of fear he says not to don't be afraid. And certainly in these days and times of all the things, I joke about this, being a biology major, I think about all the times of all the things that are out there that can kill you, especially these days. I mean, with COVID and all, but there's so much more out there. I mean, there's ponds that you can swim in to get that brain amoebas and all that in a handful of dirt, how much stuff there's in there that could kill you. And it's almost like, what do they say? Ignorance is bliss. It's like in the C-17, we've got this screen on there. It's called TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance, Traffic Collision Awareness System. And it's all the airliners have it and everything else. It basically, all the airplanes talk to each other. And on this screen, you can bring it up and you can see where all the other airplanes are and their altitude in reference to you. So if you see an airplane coming at you toward your way and it says 0 and meaning it's the same altitude, well, that's a problem. Well, we always kind of joke about that. Like, well, before we had that, it was like, ignorance is bliss. You had no idea how many other airplanes were out there that potentially could be hitting you. So, thinking about all the things that are out there in the world and to just go around life and thinking about that and being bothered by that and fearing of what could happen. What could happen? Oh, I could do this and a meteor could come and destroy us or this and that. I mean, you don't tempt the Lord your God. You don't put yourself in a situation like that. Like, I'm not going to go swimming with rib roast tied around my neck with a bunch of sharks. I'm not going to go do that. I tempt the Lord. But also that I shouldn't live in fear that a shark's going to come up underneath my seat at the movie and grab me, right? So, or all of these things. We're not to live our lives in fear like that because his righteous hand is upholding us. So, hope this is encouragement to you. Don't be afraid. God's got you. So, have a great, Monday. Have a great rest of the week. Try to get back on schedule with Sundays and do some other videos as we go along here. But we'll see you next time. Take care.